You're up.
G'day, I'm Simon, SGLC from Ozscapers, and this is my review of the Nikon Z7. So it is hot as hell here today. I've got the fan blasting away, and we've got those hot weather bugs hammering away outside, so I'm sorry about the background noise. I want to thank MacArthur Camera House and Nikon for hooking me up with this. I've been wanting to test one of these out for ages now. So the type of photography I do a lot of landscape photography. I also do a lot of real estate photography for work, and I do a little bit of portrait work. It's not my specialty, but I do it. So in the review, I'm going to cover the elements of the camera that are relevant to the sort of shooting I do. There's plenty of reviews out there that cover everything on the camera, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it fairly brief and relevant to the sort of stuff that I do. The build quality is excellent. It's really good. The buttons have a good solid feedback to them, and the body feels very stable, you know, and it balances well. Like, they don't build these to make them part of the benefit of a mirrorless camera is that they're smaller, but they don't build it to make them compact. They build it so you can have the sensor closer to the front of the mount, which lets you do a whole new range of lenses. But it does feel very solid. It feels well balanced with the kit lens that comes with it, which is a 24-70 f4. But you can put a 70-200 on it, and it still feels solid and well balanced in your hands. So the button layout is a little bit different to other Nikon full frame cameras. You've got the advanced shooting modes on the left now, so like aperture priority, shutter priority, manual, all that sort of thing. And then if you want to go through the other shooting modes like low speed continuous, high speed continuous, timer, all that sort of thing, you do it from this button down the bottom here. You hit that button, and then you can either adjust them with one of the dials on the right or on the touch screen. So it's a little bit different. The menu's the same, but if you're familiar with Nikon, it's pretty easy to get your head around. It's not too complicated. So one of the big differences with the mirrorless camera, besides it being smaller, you get a electronic viewfinder, or EVF. So instead of the optical viewfinder you have on a DSLR, which gives you exactly what the lens sees, it's all electronic. So it goes from the sensor and then sends it electronically to the viewfinder. So it has a few advantages. Firstly, you see the exact exposure that you're going to get. So if you're underexposing a shot with a DSLR, you're not going to know until you look at it on the back of the viewfinder, or same if you overexpose it. With an electronic viewfinder, you see exactly how it's going to appear. Plus you see the depth of field. So with a DSLR, say you're using a 1.4 lens, but you're shooting at f11, you don't see the depth of field that you're going to get at f11 until you shot it. With an electronic viewfinder, you see exactly that. You know, you've got exactly what image you're going to get. What it also does is it has built-in lens correction. So you know how normally in Lightroom you load in your raw photo, hit lens correction, it gets rid of any distortion or pin cushioning on the lens. In the Z7, lens correction is built into the camera. So if you're using something like this is the 14-24 that MacArthur Camera House have lent me. You get on the edges, if you're not shooting dead straight, on the edges you get some sort of bowing on your lines, on your edges. But if you put this on this camera, it automatically gets rid of the distortion. So you're seeing it live through the EVF without any distortion. So all the lens correction's done automatically, which is really handy if you're doing real estate photos. Handy if you're doing landscape as well, if you want to make sure you've got, you know, straight lines on the sides or running down the middle of your shot. There's also a couple of downsides with the EVF. To me, they're not a big deal, but basically the biggest downside is you get a bit of lag, and that depends on, as far as I can see, the lag depends on the amount of light that's available. So if you're shooting during the day or or afternoon or sunrise, sunset, there's not really any lag. There's a tiny bit, but it's not a big deal. But if you're shooting at night, say you go down to a remote spot, you want to shoot astro or something like that, what the EVF does is to get enough light in to the EVF so you can see what you're shooting. It not only does it push the ISO up really, really high, so you're seeing grain inside the EVF. That doesn't really matter. I mean, you're using the EVF to compose your shot anyway, so it doesn't matter. But what it does do is, like, it's sending video through to the EVF. So instead of sending video at 24 frames a second or whatever it is, it might drop that down to 4 or 5 frames a second. And the reason it does that is because it's taking quick, longer exposure images and sending them to the EVF so it's able to draw in enough light for you to see. So what that means, if you're shooting in almost no light, there's quite a bit more lag because it's taking a longer time to send through individual snapshots of the scene, if that makes sense. So one of the things I was really keen to test out on this is the vibration reduction, or the inbuilt stabilizer. Nikon call it vibration reduction. So not all mirrorless cameras have this. The Sonys do, well, the high-end Sonys do. The Canon EOS R doesn't. The Z7 does. So how it works, it's built into the sensor, and it's 5-axis stabilization. So what that means in theory is that you can get up to an additional 5 stops reduction in shutter speed. So what that means, say for example you're shooting with a fairly wide angle lens. Normally if you're shooting handheld, you wouldn't want your shutter speed to go much under 1/30th of a second before you'll get some motion blur in your shot. With vibration reduction, you should be able to get all the way down to about half a second or a quarter of a second exposure handheld. For someone like me, that would be very handy because I do a lot of like long exposure shots of you know, car light trails or water motion, and to do that traditionally you've got to have the camera sitting on a tripod because you'll get blur in the shot. But with vibration reduction, in theory, you should be able to do it all handheld, which would be a huge plus because moving your tripod around if you want to adjust your composition fractionally, it's a pain in the ass. But vibration reduction should fix that. In practice, it doesn't, well, so far, it doesn't work that way. So basically how it works, if you use an adapted lens, so this is the 14 to 24 lens, and it's for an F mount, which is the traditional Nikon mount. If you use this lens on the Z7, you reduce your 5-axis image stabilization down to 3. So that means you don't have anywhere near the amount of stops that you can run down your exposure time. So if I use this to take a handheld shot at a quarter of a second, you'd get 1 in 10 shots sharp, which it's not that big a deal. You just got to sit there, have the camera on high speed continuous, bang out 10 shots, and you'll probably have one that's decent. But if you had this lens in a native mount, which doesn't exist yet, they're coming out next year, but if you had something like this in a native Z mount like this, you would get almost every shot sharp, probably 10 out of 10. Image quality is excellent. It's 45.7 megapixels, so you get a ton of detail out of it. But what that means is if you've got 45.7 megapixels, it means you need very, very good lenses to take advantage of it. There's no point having like a shitty soft lens on the end of the camera that you're just wasting the megapixels. So you need good lens, you need a very solid tripod, because any movement when you're shooting like a long exposure shot at 45.7 megapixels, it's exaggerated because you can see so much more in the shot, so smaller movements are going to show. And you also need a more powerful computer. So yes, it's better, but you've got to upgrade your lenses, you need a better tripod, and well, I need a better computer. One of the good things with Nikon full frame cameras is that you get a native ISO of 64. So what that means is most cameras, most other competitors have their native base ISO at 100. So being able to go down to 64 means you get less noise, you get more dynamic range, and if you're shooting landscapes, because it's a stop down in ISO, it means you go down a stop in exposure time. So you have the ability to shoot slightly longer exposures than a lot of the other cameras do where 100 is your base. So at the other end of the scale, high ISO is really good. So anything up to about 6400 ISO is like no problem. You get like a tiny bit of noise, but you can very easily get rid of it in Lightroom. the native ISO on it goes up to 12,800 ISO. That's the native ISO, but you can expand it up to 25,000. What is it? 25,600 is the expanded ISO. And at that, it's usable. Like, you could definitely use it. There's a decent amount of noise, but if you're posting a photo on Instagram or something like that, you're probably not going to see it. Like, it's pretty good. I couldn't do that with my camera. It looked like shit. It's very, very good. The Wi-Fi is no good. It could be really good. It's not no good. It's okay, but it's not great. So how the Wi-Fi works is you download the SnapBridge app onto your phone, and that will link your phone to the camera. Once it's linked, you can see the image from the camera on your phone, and you can hit the button on your phone to use it like a remote. So, which is good in theory. Oh, and plus it'll download like a low resolution example of what you've taken on your camera. So it'll start sending, I think, 2 megapixel low res copies through to your phone. It sends that through Wi-Fi. The problem is with using your phone as a remote, it could be really good, but how it works. See, the only reason I use a remote when I'm shooting is for bulb mode, so you can take really long exposures. You can't really do that with this. What you can, but it's the worst implementation. Basically, what you got to do, once you can't select bulb mode on your phone. So what you got to do is go back to the camera, put it into manual mode, then flick it through into bulb mode. Then on your phone, you hit the shutter button. But the problem is when you hit the shutter button on your phone, no timer comes up on the phone. So you've got to guess the time. You can't load a timer app, because if you exit out of the SnapBridge app, it disconnects you from the camera. You can't set a timer in the app. So basically what you've got to do is you'd have to have your camera, your phone, and a separate timer, and then hit the shutter button on your phone, watch your timer, and once you've hit the timer, then you can deactivate it. So, like, it's okay, but it would be so easy. I would think it would be very easy for them to include a timer in here, or to at least let you exit the app to load another timing app. And the other problem is it takes ages to connect. Every time it disconnects, which happens every time you go into the main menu on the app, it takes about 2 minutes to connect. So it's not great. So overall, I love it. I think it's sick. If you are doing the sort of photography I do, like landscape, real estate, and a little bit of portrait, it's perfect. Like if you're a wedding shooter, or you do sport or something like that, it's not the best. Like you've only got the one memory card slot, which is a bit of a problem. The battery life is a little bit less, and you got those issues with focusing. But with the sort of stuff I do, it's excellent. Like it's sharp, it's fast, it's well built. It's just as well weather sealed as the D850 as well. The only problem is I'm not that rich. It's $5.5 grand with the adapter, so it's big money. But if you can afford it, it's excellent. So that's it. That's my thoughts on it. Yeah, thanks for checking out the review. If you have any questions, or if you want to give me some feedback on it, flick me a message, or flick us a message on the Ozscapers page, and yeah, we'll see you soon.